That's everybody.
Your last one?
I think I got some still. Thank you.
It's one of those guys back from Mexico today or tomorrow. And he's got a college kid that comes back. I think he's got 19 or
All set.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Start out with a roll call. Commissioner Mecca. Here. Commissioner Fickow. Here. Trustee Renner. Here. Andersensky. Here. President Lysick. Clerk Kellner.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Trustee Howdy Shell.
Here.
Engineer Rao.
Here.
Fire Marshal Rock.
Here.
I am going to give everyone a quick warning. We do televise all the planning commission meetings. The microphone is very sensitive and it does pick up even the slightest whispers in the audience. Just letting you know, because that disclaimer didn't make it on this agenda.
Gotcha.
So if you have something you want to say in private, you should probably go to the hallway or something, just so it's not picked up and broadcast.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Go on to item 2, consideration and approval of minutes from the March 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
Move to dispense with reading of the minutes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
So, under number 4, old business, section B, it's actually on page 3 of the minutes, about a quarter of the way down. Talking about phase 1, phase 2, it says trustee Heidi shall advise that phase 1 looks into the historical and current conditions, and I think those next words should be then makes recommendations. Just
Oh,
kind of some
thank you.
stuff.
Fifth page. Didn't see we have James Raymond spelled one way here and Mr. Raymond spelled a different way here. I'm not sure which is correct. discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's approved. Item 3, old business. A, village staff / official review and discussion and a status update to the planning commission regarding the Cajun Phase 2 fill project. The property is located at approximately in surrounding South 72, West 23085 National Avenue, and it is zoned B3 General Business District. Naomi?
We met last week, me, myself, and Will Hine, Eric, and the applicants, to discuss moving forward. It was the pre-construction meeting that was conditional upon their approval to get started in the spring. So they had proposed some work that they wanted to do based on some DNR comments. We discussed the plan set, how the work was going to get accomplished. Meeting minutes were written out by Engineer Hine and distributed. DNR was kept in the loop, and we're waiting for, DNR requested that the applicants verify that they agree with the meeting minutes, and we want them to start moving dirt to stabilize the spillway of the pond and dam structure for completion of the site at the end of June. So mostly it's been Eric and Will working with them. They also did a site inspection after our meeting, in which they followed up with some areas that need to be reseeded, restabilized, mostly at the top of the hill. Not a violation, but just work that needs to get finished up, to finish up the project so we can close it out. Do you know to close it out?
Do you feel that if they change that output to riprap, that can be approved at staff level?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the
'Cause
same location.
I don't want them to put anything back, and that's what is on the plan, correct?
Yeah, that is what's on the plan. It's what's on the plan for the DNR. The meeting minutes revised the plan to allow them to just put blanket based on
Right.
their engineer's acceptance of that and the logistics of getting the rock down the hill. So to go back to the plan, I don't think is
Correct.
an issue. Or would also be an issue with the DNR. They've already approved that.
I think that's gonna be a
The
strong,
location would be the same and
right. Anybody have any questions?
Based on these pictures, it looks like they're putting a pad up on the top of the hill, is that correct?
they were spreading the rock a little bit because it was pretty high, and they're anticipating that they're gonna have to leave it and include it on their as-built plan set for the DNR. So they wanted to do that, and then they ordered the materials to finish the spillway, which was a turf reinforcement mat. And when they get the materials, then they can grade the spillway and complete the grading of that.
How big of a area do they want to cover with gravel? There's a,
Just, in my we agreed on just wherever was already gravel, just lower gravel.
okay,
Not extending the footprint of the gravel, just knocking it down, and then touching up the access road that they're gonna keep. That's already gravel.
So they could put some of the gravel pile on the existing road,
Yes. It's
just
already
to
approved.
use some of it up.
Yes.
Right. Anybody else? Well,
And all of this will be memorialized in a final as-built plan of where that gravel is, the stockpile and what, if any roads, access roads that they're leaving on the site will be in an as-built plan when we get the as-built for the pond. We'll add that to the survey.
Thank you. I am going to take the liberty of skipping ahead to 4A. I'm going to try and keep everything in order here. New business, review, discussion, and possible action on the request of applicant and property owners Ed and Sue Rack to construct an accessory structure exceeding 800 square feet in area, over 18 feet in height, and forward of the front line of the principal building under 2.45 acre property located at West 231, South 7895 Woodland Lane at Sherry Avenue. The property is zoned R2 residential district.
Right, so Mr. and Mrs. Rack are here tonight and able to answer questions if they come up as part of discussion. But basically what they're asking to do is construct a 1,020 square foot accessory storage building. So that's over the usual 800 square foot limit that the village has in the code. But we do provide lots in excess of 40,000 square feet. You can have up to 2% of your lot area in an accessory building, provided the planning commission reviews and approves it. So in this case, that's exactly what they're asking you to do. And you can see by the site plan that was submitted by the applicant that I'll cover the other exception first, and that is to say the building is proposed to be 18 feet 1 inch tall, and they earned that 1 inch by being offset and setback more than 10 feet in excess of what's required minimally in the code, but it still requires the planning commission's approval. So what the code says is for every 10-foot additional offset and 10-foot additional setback, you get an extra foot of height in your building, subject to planning commission approval. Okay? So those are the two exceptions being asked for tonight. Based on the site plan, you can see that this sits well back of the applicant's house, but it does sit along Sherry, I don't know if it's Sherry or Sherry. Sherry Avenue. And they do propose to put it 40-some feet back. It's a little bit at an angle. Now, in terms of whether that's forward of the principal structure to the street, again, that becomes an interpretation, right? Technically, yes, it is closer to Sherry than the principal residence. But is it closer to Sherry than the front of the principal building? No, it is not. So that, in my interpretation, is that this can be permitted. The building details themselves are in the packet. It's principally just a metal structure with an overhead door facing Sherry. I had a set of recommended conditions that I would suggest you consider attaching if you're inclined toward an approval in this request tonight, including that the applicant would secure any building, electric, driveway, culvert, plumbing, and similar permits that would be required from the building inspector before the start of construction on the building. Number two, that the applicant enter into and record a deed restriction that prohibits any business or commercial use of that building before the construction is permitted.
We don't have
We don't have that.
staff report.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
We don't have the
Second
second
page
page of
is
the
the
staff
page
report.
For the staff report.
Take one, one copy.
That's funny, I would get it, because I got a random packet right on the stack that you guys got.
Yeah, it wasn't on the back of his email either.
So the garage door was gonna face Sherry.
I can pull the report up on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You too. There we go.
So the four conditions are up on the screen now. Secure any building permits, execute a deed restriction prohibiting business use of the building before the start of construction would be allowed. I put in condition number 3 that landscape plantings would be added to add to the yard area within 20 feet of the building along the Sherry Avenue side. To the immediate south is a conservancy area that will remain conservancy for the long term. But just slightly west, single-family residential picks up there. And so to the extent that the commission, even in spite of the substantial setback, feels like there should be some plantings there, I left room for that to flow off of your discussion. Lighting, if any, would be limited to low-intensity, decorative-type residential wall fixtures. And the materials and colors of the accessory building need to match the principal residence. Match, don't complement the principal Did you not get the map? Did somebody say the map was not in
Yeah, we
The
got,
map,
You get the map.
it's not that section.
got it?
No, it's- There's a decent amount of trees on that. part
It's
of the
all
property.
woods.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you guys will have to clear some, but you're leaving up enough that'll
Yeah.
also create some screening and coverage that way too?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to visualize it, I just pulled it up on my phone, I was like, yeah, it looked like there was quite a bit of trees back there.
Yeah, we're just gonna cut a driveway and clear for the building, and that's about it.
is the intent to take the driveway directly out to south to Sherry?
Yes.
Okay.
On the plat survey, there's a note on here saying that you're gonna move this 20 feet towards the middle.
Yes.
Yes.
Because of the size of the structure.
They wanted more, driveway.
They wanted us, 40 feet off of
More
Sherry
setback.
Avenue versus what we have.
Got it. Are you gonna have plumbing in there or just electrical?
Nothing, just
Nothing right now.
storage, no.
Yeah, just storage to start?
Yeah.
I guess with your recommendations, the only thing that I can see that may not really be applicable is number 3 with the landscape plannings. It is a wooded area, and the intent is to keep the wooded area except for the drive and the immediate plat where the building's going to go. I'm not really sure that there would be any room for landscape plantings.
I think that's, sure.
It'd be great if you guys want to put some up, but I'm not sure we really need to put that in
Yeah.
recommendation.
Like I said, as long as the minimal amount of trees are removed, I don't, it's so thick back there. Sure, somebody's gonna see the driveway and potentially see the garage door from the road, but you can't block that with landscaping, because you're blocking your driveway, so. Yeah, I would agree, I don't know if we can really ask them to do a whole lot of landscaping if they're keeping all those trees.
And that's why I didn't put anything in there.
So, conversation topic.
Yep.
With it being a steel structure and you have in there materials and colors of the accessory cell match the principal residence, I would assume the residence isn't steel. And having a steel roof also?
By match,
Just color wise.
I'm really referring to the color scheme.
Okay.
And right now, we've got like a grayish brick. And we're looking at basically we've got samples here.
I just question
We're
that.
staying pretty neutral.
Recommendation.
I'll take those though if you have your chosen colors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good shape, or compliments.
It's not- I was just wondering, if there's anything about being, having to have, either
It doesn't have to be
asphalt
metal, yeah.
composition roof or something like that, being a steel structure.
I'm not,
There-
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was over there.
I was gonna say, is there currently a culvert, crossing Cherry?
No, we're gonna need, when we talked to Justin, he said we needed culvert.
So that's not a county road. I assume that's a.
No, that's, village/village.
Yeah.
Two villages.
Right.
You have something else on?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the land back there. Is there any type of elevation pitch, anything that you're going to have to look at any type of retaining walls or anything else for the structure?
Where we picked it out was the flattest point.
Okay. Looks fairly.
if you zoom in there, what's that number right behind the house compared, there you go.
This is 970, it's just climbing 75, 80, 85, 90, 95,000.
But that's over quite a distance too.
So it might be 3 foot, 4 foot of difference between the front and the rear. It's
For the building itself, yeah.
Yeah, that's not,
Not enough to justify everything in there,
yeah. Is that virgin woods back in there? I mean, nothing else has ever been back there, right?
If I was to downsize it and keep it like I have it on the survey, would that be a problem? In the building, to make it a 40 by 30, but then drop it down to a 16-foot peak?
That's where the interpretation has to be made. I'm going to try to explain this to the commission to understand. First of all, with respect to the code language itself, we get to that section. It's going to take a second here. In any residential, business, or industrial district, the accessory buildings shall be located behind the front line of the principal structure unless otherwise specifically approved by the planning commission following review and consideration of the site plan when not a part of the main building. So my interpretation is that, and this is important for you to know going forward, located behind the front line of the structure. So if there are two street frontages, are we going to call those both the front line? And I think the answer has to be yes, because on much smaller lots, and corner lots in particular, you could end up with an accessory structure that's closer to the street than the house is in its backyard, if you can picture that setting. So yes, the planning commission can approve this particular location because of the second half of that provision, just like I read, unless otherwise specifically approved by the planning commission. So I do think that that structure technically sits forward of the principal structure, not, I wouldn't call it the front line, but it's forward of the principal structure. So that's the interpretation I'm making. You'll benefit from that next time an accessory structure comes up on a different corner lot that isn't as big.
But your question was whether we could change the size of what you're, so
Yeah.
right now you have it depicted on the survey as a 40 by 30.
Yeah, and I'd go to a 40 by 30, but then the the peak would come down to 16 feet instead of the 18.
Yeah, 16 is code compliant.
Yeah, I can't see why that would be any issue.
Okay.
Instead of like 12 foot, we want to go 10 foot for,
For walls.
for
And
walls.
I thought you were talking about setting it back.
No.
more or less.
When they were outside.
Because we had talked about that on the phone. You say on the plan that you're gonna move it 20 more feet back. But what this commission, I think, is saying is you may not have to unless they're requiring it.
I don't really see any issue personally, to take a look at the setback from Sherry as compared to the house. I mean, it's 400 plus feet away from it, plus it's in the middle of the woods. I don't even think you could see that from the house, can you?
In the summer,
Summer,
no.
It's not line of sight, in my opinion. I would definitely look at that exemption or variance.
Yeah, again, they wouldn't have to disturb as much woods if they didn't go back that extra 20 feet, which would, it's up to them, but if they don't have to, I don't think I would.
That's trees to take down.
Right.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the construction of the accessory structure as requested by Ed and Sue Rack with the recommendations of the planner minus number 3.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move ahead to item 4B. Review, discussion, and consultative feedback on the request of Charlie Durkee, West 235 South 6855 Big Bend Drive, to build a pen and raise/keep pheasant from late summer through late winter on his 8.94 acre parcel of land, which is zoned R1 residential.
All right, so I brought this up just under planners report. Charlie is here tonight.
Okay.
He has
And for?
8.94 acres of land, and it's zoned R1. And in the R1 district, the only fowl you're allowed to keep is up to 6 non-crowing hen chickens. So what Charlie would like to do is raise pheasants as a seasonal hobby, I guess. Up to 75-ish birds?
Yeah.
That's what you had told me, yeah. So I can't find a path to that in the zoning code, because I would tell him to add the agricultural overlay, which would open up some of these opportunities for him to be more like an agricultural enterprise over there. But you have to have at least 10 acres to do that. So there's the option of amending the animal keeping ordinance if you want to try to find a way to make a path for this. There's the potential of changing the minimum size lot to add agricultural overlay. I'm not sure either of those is a great idea because not everybody's always going to be in Mr. Durecky's situation where the backyard is really very discreet and private and probably not likely to cause a nuisance to anybody. My only other thought was that potentially through the LTD limited use overlay district that we created probably 5 or 6 years ago, that he, by interpretation of the planning commission, could be construed to be we allow contractors' businesses, for instance, beauticians. If you add the LTD overlay, you can have your home plus your small business enterprise on that same lot. I don't know if Charlie feels like he could elevate this thing to, in all of our minds, something of a sort of a business enterprise. Maybe he shares some of his pheasant off to the hunt club or something. But I'm looking for feedback from the commission. I got the sense that you were interested in hearing more about this last month. So here are some of the details. The plans that I received not in duplicate, they're in your packets as PDFs. I just took a photo shot of them, shot in there as a PDF. But if you want to see the larger copy for any reason. But what I'm looking for my sake and Mr. Drecke's, is guidance on whether and to some extent how you'd like to handle this. Would you like to just leave it off the books or try to see a path clear? And if that's your route, which do you prefer in terms of ordinance changes?
So would this be part of the business? Or is this just?
No, it would basically, I don't, no, I would be doing it for personal use.
I apologize my ignorance on pheasants, but do they make noise or they?
Mostly spring when the roosters are cackling for hens,
Okay.
but by then they would be gone. Basically, it would be August, September, you would get them, they would probably be half grown at that time, and then they would be gone by I think April 15th is the very end, but usually we don't go past March for using.
Even though that you're only wanting to raise the pheasants for a portion of the year, will the structure remain for the rest of it?
Yeah, it would be, I did make it and design it so that I could actually take it back down, but I wouldn't want to assemble it every year, okay? It would just be basically the 2 feet at the bottom to keep to making the weasels out would be a roofing panel that would go around, dug down, probably 8 inches, and then 4x4 posts, and everything would be screwed in. It would just be it's a poultry netting that goes over the top of it, and the sides would be half by half mesh, I believe. Depends upon cost of all the materials going higher and higher every day, but.
Looking at about 75?
Yeah, 75. There'd be, there certainly is some mortality in there. I don't know what percentage they would tell me that I should figure, but ultimately I would be hoping to have 50 to 75 successful.
And then what would you do with the birds when it came time for spring?
Birds are put on and used to train dogs into hunt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary, do I understand the code correctly on for the R1 district? I think it says R2 there, but I think it's R1 you were meaning. Okay. Up to 6-9 crowing hen chickens, do you have to get permissions or signed off on your neighbors before you do that? Did I read that correctly? I think. Is that? I don't remember for certain, but
The animal keeping ordinance?
yeah, that you have to get basically the blessing of your neighbors in writing before you would be allowed to do that.
I don't.
And I guess the other question with that too, is there any type of licensing, or do you have to get a permit or something to keep those 6 non-crowing hen chickens?
No, you do not need the signature of your neighbor.
Okay.
I do not recall that going into the code.
Okay.
And I don't have that particular code with me tonight. I know the one that's online is not the up-to-date one,
Okay.
so I can get that
Yeah.
animal keeping ordinance out. But no, we did not subject it to neighbors' approval.
Do we have any other
regulations?
Well, not even just regulations, I was gonna say, do we have any other thing in the village that anyone's aware of on the plan that would be similar to this? Anybody else that's raising things?
Not that I know.
My neighbor's got chickens.
Yeah, plan to.
Fine.
Even had a girl.
I don't know what, 75 or so pheasants do compared to,
Yeah, but you gotta
Five
look
chickens.
at, you're on 8 acres.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really
as opposed
small.
to a smaller,
unit.
No, right.
city lot,
Yeah,
Right, it's a lot different.
well, especially the backdrop,
Right.
especially the location of the backdrop there.
he's got kind of a special situation with,
Yeah.
Right.
something
He's
like
looking
that
at
go to the
putting
Board
it
of
right
Appeals
in
maybe?
here,
Can we do that?
You know.
Can we push this to the Board of Appeals or something, that they could give him a waiver?
No, you can't
No?
push a use variance.
Would it be a conditional use that would fall under?
No, that would open up, the Board of
Indoors.
Appeals to
Okay,
any use
okay, I
request,
just,
yeah.
it was just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's not an option. Another option, you were gonna say something.
I just asked if it's conditional use, if that would fall under that, being this.
Yeah, you could add it, as a conditional use in the R1 district. I take back, I think this is R2 actually.
So you have an R2 up on top, and down in one of the discussion paragraphs, you called out the 6 non-crowing hen chickens per R1 lot.
Oh, okay.
So that's, I think it is R2.
In R2, it defers to what you're allowed in the R1,
Yeah.
so that's why that's in there.
Flows anyway.
So it is zoned R2, but you could just add that as a conditional use. Remember that conditional uses now are pretty much a use permitted by right that you can attach defensible conditions onto, so anybody who's R2 would have to be able to, would pretty much have to be allowed to do it. You could,
What is the enforcement on that if, let's say there is an issue with neighbors or something like that coming back at us as far as?
well, that's why through conditional uses and site plan of operation approvals, you set all those conditions, and they're part of the terms of approval, and they're enforceable by the village forever after that.
Would that include notifying the neighbors prior to approving of the conditional use?
Yeah, conditional uses automatically trigger a public hearing, so they get a mailing, and a public hearing is put in paper, a notice is put in paper. What you could do in your animal keeping ordinance is trigger up is put a trigger in at like 5 acres, where the planning commission could review and approve higher density bird count.
That's what I was thinking, because you wouldn't want to open that door for the standard lots, but if there's a lot that's larger than normal, you obviously have more flexibility.
Is 5 acres a rational number? Is 8.94?
That's the magic number.
I would think eight acre bird, you would probably be a lot safer than a
Sure,
5 acre.
lower risk.
Yeah.
Okay. I get the feeling that commission wants to be adaptable for this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you think that's the road you'd like to go, I could be back next month with that language.
I don't think that gives that flexibility for it, but it's reducing a lot of the risk that we have to deal with this frequently because of the size restriction there. There's a lot, even in the R2.
Okay. All right, I'll come back with some fairly restrictive language then that takes it up to 8 acres and sets some specific regulations. And you could be back on the agenda on that same night. The planning commission could review and recommend it, or review and approve subject to the language being finalized by the commission, adopted by the board. And only after that would happen would your plan be.
Yeah, that's all fine, it's all good. Yeah, there's, whichever way, it's fine. So,
You don't
Is
need that much
75 you're
outcome.
looking at?
Looking, trying to get 75, yeah,
It's kind of
so
refreshing.
it's kind of the number, so.
So that's another question too, is if you're gonna go to 8 acres, what is the amount that you're gonna think is a fair, I mean, is 75 the number that we're gonna shoot for, or what's the limit? I mean,
Yeah.
6 to 75 is a substantial increase.
Yeah,
so.
thinking it's gonna be a huge number where, you know, if you have at least 8, you can have up to, whatever that number works out to be, 15 additional birds, or 20 additional birds
Per acre.
per acre, whatever that number works out to be is probably how I
We have an escalator based on the acreage.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
And,
Yeah, on that second page from the planning report.
yeah,
You guys did too, alright, I thought it was just out of sequence.
we'll jump back to item 3B, old business, review, discussion, and possible approval of the site plan/plan of operations request of applicant Jamin Peterson doing business as Lake Park Storage Condos LLC, develop a 42-unit self-storage/small business condominium project on 4.11 acres of land located north and east of State Highway 164, Big Bend Drive, at Edgewood Avenue, excluding direct frontage on either. The property owners are Howard Gleason and Maureen Gleason, Extreme Exteriors Incorporated, South 8654 Big Bend Road LLC, and EEI Construction LLC. The property is Zone B3 General Business District.
All right, so you've got a substantial packet of information that contains, it's covered by a development agreement and deed restriction document. But what that addresses are all of the plans that lay under it, okay? So that document is a topic unto itself. I put it in the same staff report because a lot of what we're talking about under item 3B goes to that issue. And specifically, what I wanted to call your attention to is the architectural plans in your packet. And what's noteworthy about that is that the buildings, all of the buildings 1 through 5, which is the phase 1 section of the plan, are now proposed to have toilet and sink facilities included in each one of the floor plans. Is that still the plan?
An option. They're not all gonna have them. They're gonna be stubbed for with the option to.
Okay, so they could all have them.
They could, yes.
Okay, so it's an important point, and it's a point that came up only by chance that I catch that on your architectural plans when you sent me the last edition.
Sure.
But I want to point that out to the planning commission and ask for any discussion that raises on your parts.
Would they all be serviced off of one well?
One well and one septic.
Okay.
Yes.
The one over by the owner's lawn?
Correct.
Is the septic properly sized if all owners decide to go with that option?
Correct. It'll be sized for the maximum amount, and then most likely that's not gonna be the case, but it'll be sized for, I think it was 16.
21?
No, it's not 21, because it's not,
Because you have 4 units inside the building, one with the owner's lounge.
right, but I don't believe they should be on building 5.
You're not gonna stub out 5, you're saying?
No, we're not
Okay, so
stubbing
do
out
1
5.
through 4?
Yeah, so I think it's 17 bathrooms total.
Two, 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. 17 plus the owner's lounge.
Yeah, building 5 shows restrooms and all.
Does that mean that each of the separate units would then have its own water heater and other appliances to make water happen for all that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So then they would have individual gas mains coming in, or would that be electric?
There's gas already.
Yeah, they'd have gas already for the
Yeah, they were
furnaces,
gonna have heat already.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is more water than anything.
right?
That would be true.
So since this came up last minute, so to speak, I wrote a memo and forwarded it that the addition of these utilities to the structures, we'll need to see the layout of the laterals to ensure separation is appropriate, a revised site plan showing that.
Would they also be able to still up for like individual showers and things
No.
like that if they want to?
No, it's strictly,
Toilet sink,
what's that?
toilet sink.
It's strictly, yep, ADA compliant, bathroom, toilet, sink. And the reason, quite honestly, the reason we're doing the bathrooms is more so for the water. We want to be able to provide water for somebody to wash a car or whatnot. If we're doing the infrastructure for the water and the floor drain, it makes sense just to stub it out for a bathroom right away. I mean, we're already doing all the plumbing, it's a couple $100. Most likely, I would say 20% of those will actually end up doing bathrooms. But again, I can't guarantee that,
Is
so.
it only those buildings that's gonna have the floor drains and allow people to individually hose off their equipment and stuff? Do whatever they want, or is it all buildings?
Nope, just those, the phase two, nothing.
Because I thought the original plan, we'd asked that before, was just going to have the one place for like pressure wash station, washout,
Mhm.
right next to the owner's lounge. And then you were doing away with the individual drains in each of the locations, each of the units.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Okay. And all that water from the washout, drains, so forth, all that's going to go to the septic?
Correct.
Or is that factored into the size of the septic?
Yep,
So if somebody sits there and runs a ton of water, septic will be sized enough to do that?
Yep.
Okay. I don't recall seeing some of those numbers put into the septic, engineered,
The septic system is reviewed by the county,
okay.
and I talked with Jason Cromie, the building inspector, as well, and we sent him over the plans because he does a lot. He verifies the county's approval of the septic and the well permits. So he is aware that they're going for these units now being fully serviced with water and septic.
Okay, so that will be reviewed to
It
make
will be
sure.
reviewed, yeah, the building inspector was,
I know-
we've talked to him.
I never brought it up because I just assumed that that was all through permitting and inspection, you know.
Yeah, the sizing is left up to the building inspector and the county.
Right, planning was presented with calculated numbers on the size of the septic, so I just don't recall that there was anything about, floor drains and gallons per minute going through each floor drain and so forth to make sure that the septic doesn't become overloaded, so just pointing that out, we should review and make sure.
So that really is the only trailing item that remained to be reviewed in terms of the underlying plans for the project. Okay? The site plan has come to be consistent with the terms of the approval. All of the other plans have been adjusted to reflect all of the requirements of the commission as discussed over the past several months. And that's what's in this big packet that you got.
Yeah,
Okay. So the agreement, the development agreement, now I'm jumping down and talking about item 4C.
Can I ask about 3B real quick, just on the discussion point here that you have? They were talking about that some of the units now depict a mezzanine level build-out. Can
Right.
you
Yeah.
just talk about that? Or
It-
whomever?
It didn't show up in the architectural plans until recently, that there would be a second level that could be finished out, not entirely, but some part of the upper level could be finished out, for whatever purpose the owner might have. But it now showed up in the plans, and I wanted to make sure and point that out to the commissioners who understand that what wasn't there now is.
Jamin, that would be what you were talking about with elevated offices or whatever on library stairs.
Storage mostly, but again, we had to put that in there. The bathrooms and the mezzanine all had to go in there for the state approved plan, so when
So they spec the building properly.
correct. Right.
And that's great, but the
Right.
plans very specifically were
Right.
reviewed by the planning commission,
Right,
and I'm pointing out the changes.
right, yep, right.
And that's all interior mezzanine, right? That's not
Yes,
anything
yes,
else?
nope,
Okay,
all
yeah.
interior, yep,
I know we kind of talked about that before, and I just wanted to make sure that that was still the same thing that we were talking
Yep.
about, so, yeah.
most likely not, again, an office, because it's 16-foot headroom by the time you have 7-foot, anything for, so it's mostly gonna be for storage.
You said building 5 is not having bathrooms?
Correct.
But
It
it
does
shows
have
it here?
bathrooms.
Correct.
Yeah, it does have bathrooms.
Which we're
I think
at.
they sent in the plans that way, just what we discussed, that it's too close to the owner's lounge, doesn't make any sense.
Right,
Have you submitted your plans for septic and well improvement?
no,
Okay, when you do that, can you copy me and
Yep.
send it out?
yep, I'm meeting with Pear tomorrow,
Okay.
for a lateral layout and all the proper sizing and stuff, so.
If you send it to me, I'll probably forward it to the building inspector.
Yep.
If you're taking it out as an option, then it should come off the building fire plan.
Okay.
So I'm moving on to the
Let's see.
4C. And what I thought I would do is really just go through the main bullet points of the developer's agreements. And you can kind of follow along with your plans as you go. First of all, we have the certified survey map, which is complete, but Jamin, the one you brought in is not the right one.
What's not?
No, it still has that easement on page 3, and your attorney said to take those off because there's a separate easement document now.
Really?
Yeah. Dave Wanta made that comment in one of the exchanges.
So this isn't required anymore?
That's not required, and then the little bit of verbiage that's on the first page.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe have Terry shoot me a email copy or a PDF copy of the revision,
Okay,
or you have them print the hard copy and bring it over for signatures.
okay.
But it's ready to go.
Yeah,
The easements have already been recorded. I don't know when that trigger got pulled, but it did. So fortunately, there were no changes.
So the easements are already set, signed off on and everything?
They're recorded,
They are recorded?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So even though that there was an easement cease and desist request to the Lake Park HOA,
we could go right over it.
go right over it?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
there was
so
a
both of
question
those-
about that, and I didn't know for sure how that
Yeah.
worked out.
Yeah, it had something to do with the language of non-exclusivity. But both of the easements are in the packet, the recorded version of those. So those documents are done. The certified survey map is essentially done. Correctly.
So can I ask, I read through the documents for the CSMs. And I don't know if it's supposed to go into the CSMs or into the development agreement and deed restrictions, but we had talked exclusively about making sure that there was language about the 60-foot easement going across the landfill property to state that there is potentially contaminated soils underneath, and there may have to be work done, including removal of that structure on top of the road, and it would float back to the condominium owners association for any costing on that. I haven't seen any language anyplace reflecting that concern. And I don't know if it's supposed to go into the easements on the CSM,
It
or if it
shouldn't
would
go
go
into
into,
the, it shouldn't go into the easements or the CSM, because
Okay.
that's, you know, just, those are technical documents that attend strictly to the facts of
okay.
the
So
legal
then I would go into
descriptions
the
and the real
development
estate.
agreement and deed restrictions.
So we could add that to the deed restrictions, that, because this deed, development agreement and deed restriction will be a recorded document, so it will turn up as a part of the title records for people who buy in these condominiums. I can, again, we need the whole commission to act as a group on anything we do, but you're asking that language be added to the development agreement that says, repeat it for me again.
The concern that we brought up during our robust discussion last time, just kind of floated into it the 2 sessions ago, is that the 60-foot easement going across the landfill site, coming from Edgewood and accessing the primary, being the primary access to the actual condominium site.
Okay.
The road that goes across that, it's on top of potentially contaminated ground. It's on top of the landfill, basically. And any time into the future, if there's remediation that has to be done to the landfill, there is the potential chance that that road would have to be physically removed in order to remove the soils and contamination underneath it. If that's the case, I had asked the important question of who would be basically footing the bill for that road being on easement and being part of the agreement, and who would actually physically own that private road. And the thought process was that that would go back to the condominium owners association. And each individual owner who would have to sign the deed restriction and development agreement, or whatever they would have to sign, would then thus be responsible for a portion of that cost, potential removal of that road as a structure, and then replacement of that road for the primary entryway. And it needed to be stated because that's something that, at least I strongly feel that they need to know about prior to signing off on a easement.
I'm going to keep a running list of all these proposed changes that are going to be added, and look for a formal action on everything cumulatively. I think that's the best way to go.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
I remember that being brought up too.
Yes.
I think you had acknowledged
We're
it.
putting a disclaimer in the condo docs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
It actually need to go into the deed restrictions, though, I believe. Be the place where it would have the most.
It's,
The most tea.
what Jamin is saying is that it's in the declaration, the condo declaration documents, which are their private side documents,
Okay.
which we look over, just to make sure there's not any glaring disparities. But this document could also contain that
Right.
same provision.
Because at the end, you're selling these condos to whomever's buying them, correct? There's no, they're then taking on ownership, and that ownership would be part of what they have to look at for the deed restrictions.
But even in our subdivision, we have like 2 different documents. We kind of have one that's considered more deed-like, and then the other one that's a declaration. So as long as it's covered, you know, when they go to purchase the lot, they're signing off that they've read and understand their liability related to those documents.
Correct.
Whether it's part of a deed or a declaration, I don't know if that really matters, as long as it's covered or contained within, right?
It
That's the
matters
deed.
to the extent that the declaration is a private document, the association can change
True.
it of
Yep.
their volition.
Mhm.
This document, they can't change.
The declaration gives Jamin the ability to go back to the owners and hit them.
Right.
We're gonna go back and hit him.
Right.
So he doesn't have to bear the cost, he can go to the owners and say, hey, you sign this.
Right. Right.
So I don't know that we need,
long as it's covered. I
They're
think
not
it's-
gonna list each individual owner as a responsible party.
Right.
They're gonna list the landowner,
Right.
so
Which would be each individual,
no,
the landowner stays.
They don't own
Right.
the easement, we own the land on, that the easement's on,
Or
so.
would that go, so Extreme Exteriors is going to keep, you're going to be the owner of the land, it's not going to go to the Lake Park.
He's talking about the
The
land
land.
site where the road is. They still own.
Oh,
the land.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Right,
Yep.
different parcel, that's why,
Yep.
yeah.
right,
Sorry.
Yep.
I didn't think about that, okay, yeah, okay.
so I think we're good without putting that in a deed restriction.
it's covered either way as long as it goes into the
Right.
declaration.
You know, that site is your land, not the condo, and
Right.
Right.
So not in the deed restriction document then, that we're reviewing, the village's deed restriction document?
I don't
In the
know.
declaration?
I think it's fine in the declaration. Again, I mean, they're the landowner, you know,
Right.
they're at the landfill site, so, you know, if you would think they're the ones that would be liable for the cost as the landowner, you know, they're the
Right.
ones that give up the easement
Right,
and
the
go on the
village
road,
is
be,
gonna
you know,
go
the
after,
village. Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
extreme
Right.
exteriors, and
Right,
you're gonna go after whoever
Yep.
you want.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So secondly, the 30-foot wide easement and the 60-foot wide easement, that's, like I said, both of them are recorded, they're in good order. Paragraph 3, that the project construction cannot begin until the developer establishes an escrow account or a letter of credit with the village for 120% of the cost to construct these things. Complete project area grading and stabilization, the raise and removal of all the existing structures and any materials, equipment, or supplies that are presently stored outdoors on the site. There is the Quonset hut, and there's a lot of landscaping related materials and things. Erosion control, private street and emergency access way, complete project area landscaping, and all stormwater management facilities. So all of those things would have to be escrowed for upfront, and as they progressively complete the installation of those things and are approved as according to Hoyle by the village engineer, they can get their escrow reduced. Paragraph number 4, all exhibits required to be attached. The developer must provide in PDF and 11x17, so a great effort went into getting this to you tonight. There will still be some small adjustments that are technical matters, but what you have tonight is a pretty good representation of what it's going to look like in the end. Paragraph 5, unless otherwise specifically approved by the village, phase 1 will consist of buildings, the owner agrees that it won't receive occupancy approval for any individual condominium unit in phase 1, which is 1, 2, and 4, until all the following improvements have been constructed according to the approved construction plans. So the construction plans themselves are Exhibit C in your packet, and what they need to complete before they can get an occupancy permit in any one of those first buildings is the soil sampling analysis has to be conducted in the basin, and the results of the analysis given to the village for review and approval, and the final results attached as Exhibit D. So that testing has been done. It has been reviewed by the village's engineering firm, and favorable recommendation given that the conditions out there are acceptable for the installation of the pond and the development of the project. That is Exhibit D in your packets. The next thing they need to complete before they can get a permit, an occupancy permit in phase 1 is the private street off Edgewood Avenue has to be completed to those very specific conditions that Naomi has provided there as far as construction is concerned. Paragraph C, they also have to complete the existing private gravel drive that goes out to 164 to its minimum specs according to the construction plans. Okay? That would include getting that gate installed and formalizing the shoulders to provide a full 24 on the property, etc. The existing, the complete code compliant abandonment of any existing wells on the property. So that has to be done before they can get occupancy in phase one. Dumpster pad and enclosure has to be done as a part of phase one. The details of that enclosure are exhibit E in your packet, and the specifics of it are described here. It's 20 feet wide, 10 feet deep, 6 feet tall. The gating and the fencing, so the gating is just the one gate that says no parking, that blocks access from the fire safety drive off of 164. The fencing is just the stuff along the far west lot line behind, I forget what building number it is. 6, and then extending across to the gate that blocks the 164 entrance. So those are, what those gates and fences will look like are exhibited in the packet. The proposed septic system in the well shall be fully installed under proper licensing and approval if and as required by Waukesha County before occupancy could be given in buildings in phase one. All paving outlined on the approved site plan is the paving boundary for phase one. You have to refer to exhibit G to see what those boundaries are as to when paving has to be done along the way. But that document has been reviewed by both myself and the village engineer, and we feel like we've come to a really good, satisfactory result there, where the paving won't be getting chewed up by construction traffic. And yet, if construction entirely stopped, what's out there will get paved. Paragraph H, all paving, okay, just went through that. All the stormwater facilities that are located in phase one will have to be complete. And I'm not going to go through these every time for all the phases, so bear with me. Those J, K, and L are just the anticipated completion dates. They're in there as an FYI more than anything. They're not an obligation. Paragraph M, the developer will file the as-built of phase one with the village before they can get that occupancy permit for one of the buildings in phase one. So now paragraph 6 goes on to talk about those same things with respect to phase 1B, which is buildings 3 and 5. Paragraph 7 addresses those same things with respect to phase 2, which is buildings 6, 7, and 8. And then again in paragraph 8, addresses those same issues with respect to buildings 9, 10, and 11, phase 3. Okay? Paragraph 9, all of buildings 1 through 5 shall be constructed in accordance with the specifically approved architectural plans and details, including as to colors and materials set forth in Exhibit H. And then no building permit may be issued for buildings 6 through 11 until the developer has returned to the commission for review and approval of the specific architectural plan details, including floor plans, materials, colors, dimensions, and similar. So we expect all those buildings in the future phase, the north phase, to look exactly like this, but those plans aren't in our possession yet. So Walters charges, of course, to create each of these individual building plans. And so when they're ready to begin on phase 2, they'll come back to the planning commission with those architectural plans. Paragraph 10, all landscaping will be installed in accordance with the approved landscaping plan details. So the escrow will sit out there for all the landscaping to get done, and the requirement here, and the plan itself is Exhibit I in your packet, but the plan here is for them to install all of the landscaping that is directly behind or alongside each one of the buildings as those buildings are constructed, okay? So once they're completed being erected, then it's time to put the landscaping in for each one of them. But it does go on to say that the plantings in and around the stormwater pond will be completely installed during stabilization of that berm and surrounding area. Paragraph 11, permitted uses. Nothing here has changed since the very first time this item was in front of you. So that just specifies the use types and how they get approved for occupancy. Paragraph 12, human habitation, residential occupancy, and keeping of any animals on the property are prohibited. Number 13, the project is in no way associated with or a part of the neighboring residential subdivision known as Lake Park subdivision. And it goes on to say that trespassing onto Lake Park subdivision is expressly prohibited. 14, permitted hours of operation are per the terms of the business and site plan of operations approvals that may be given along the way. But if it's pure storage, 24/7 use and access is allowed, and the owner's lounge can be operable 24 hours a day. Noise emanating from the property, emanating beyond the property lines of the site is prohibited between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. Porta-johns are not permitted anywhere on the site under any circumstances except as a part of actual construction activity in pursuit of the condos being built. Paragraph 17, occupancies are not permitted that could cause an adverse impact upon the surrounding area, the village as a whole, such as businesses that would have air tools, bad odors, generate excessive traffic, litter loitering, things like that. Paragraph 18, that the condominium project and the condominium documents, the plat, the declaration, the covenants and restrictions are required to be submitted. They have been, they're attached as Exhibit J, and they have been reviewed by the village's attorney. The owner agrees it won't start construction of any of the improvements unless and until it receives requests and receives prior written approval from the village in writing. So that's just reiterated here, that you don't start site work, you don't start building construction, you don't do anything out there until you have a written approval from the village.
Yep.
Okay, so that's crystal clear. I want to double back. That reminds me that I did have a question for the commission. If you look at those paragraphs 5, 6, 7, 8, unless otherwise specifically approved by the village, the owner agrees that it will not receive occupancy approval for any individual condominium unit as to. I wonder if we shouldn't be more specific here and say unless otherwise specifically approved by the village planning commission. It's pretty open. I mean, by saying the village, it pretty much means you could go to the president and say, you know, I'd really like to get occupancy for building 1, but I haven't done all the things I was required to do. Can I get that? So I want to just make sure that the commission has thought about that question and that what you want to be in here is in here.
Can you give me a hypothetical on that?
We can give you a history.
Right.
It's happened. So I think just unfortunately, I think that it does make sense to call out the planning commission to have that approval. Just for the sake of minimizing the risk that there's, and I'm not saying it would happen here, but again, we've been bit already in the past.
And that's exactly why.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
One
not
of the downsides of that is it could push
I know.
occupancy back a full month,
To get on.
you know.
You could call a
In a
special meeting.
Yeah, if the timing was critical
Right.
where they couldn't wait, you know, for a planned meeting, then that's a discussion, yeah.
Right, okay.
Makes sense?
I had a quick question here. I don't know if this is the official or if this is gonna be up, that building 4 listed twice.
Yeah, 7F needs to be changed to building.
Oh, good.
You were on a roll, Mary, I was just gonna go back and tell you.
Bounce back, yeah.
No, that's
We
great.
got a pause there.
So with the occupancy then, it would be up to the planning commission, but again, timing, it could not have to go to a following month.
We can hold a special meeting.
Okay, all right,
If it gets sensitive, if, you know, all of a
Yeah,
sudden
yeah.
you're asking and we're another 3 or 4 weeks until the
Right.
next one because it just had one, then yeah, I think we could pull together a.
okay.
All right, so I have to go back and find my spot. 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 just provides that the public safety officials will have access through those gates. If they don't, I'm sure the gates will come down. 21, approved exterior lighting is in your packets. It's Exhibit L. The stormwater management plan and agreement for the development is completed, and it's in your packets as Exhibit N. Paragraph 23 goes into a great deal of detail about the stormwater management system, and I won't labor any of the details unless there are specific questions, in which case direct them to Naomi.
So I got,
The discharge?
yeah, I got one question on discharge. It shows on some of these maps that the discharge is still over onto the,
Other property?
Yeah, it shows on the maintenance plan. Yep, on the maintenance plan, it has the old copy. We can
Okay.
have that changed. We will get an as-built based on the construction plans. The construction plans has been changed to where it will be installed. And it will be recorded with the maintenance plan, when we get the as-built.
okay.
Alternatively, we could just have them update the maintenance plan or re-sign it.
The other, we got so many different maps and stuff here. The other, there's another plan that showed discharge basically coming right up to the lot line and just piping right there and then up here.
Yeah, and it
It
goes.
shows riprap right here for discharge right on the lot line, and then it would just go into the adjacent
And then
lot.
it flows, yeah.
Does it have to have any
That's
type
right.
of setback for stormwater discharge instead of being right on the property
Not
line?
that I'm aware of.
Okay, I don't know, that's why I asked.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. It will be part of this, it should be within the lot line. Yeah.
Right, but it's right on, I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
literally right on the survey line. I didn't know if it had to have a setback on it or not.
Not that I saw,
Okay.
but.
Alright, just curious. I didn't know if that was just, again, if that's exactly where it was going to be, or if that was still.
It'll be on the lot, yeah. It could be right up to the end. It could
Okay.
definitely.
Alright. And then the other question I had about that, here's another drawing that actually shows it discharging, but then it almost looks like there's being cut.
You're doing a little grading here, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
alright,
This would be about less than a foot, I think, here.
okay. So that would be for erosion control going on to the
That's,
adjacent
they will,
property?
and they'll have to stabilize that. That will be, to get positive flow,
Okay, alright.
maintain positive flow.
I
And-
just, I'd seen 3 different drawings.
Yeah, and
I wasn't
normally
quite
we
sure which
wouldn't be
one
able to
we
do
were
that, but
looking
he
at.
owns both properties,
Okay,
so.
and that wouldn't require an easement onto that property? To do that at all?
I don't know, because he owns it. We need an easement?
So it would be
I
two
asked
separate
that
properties,
question
right?
in one of my messages,
The attorney said,
whether we needed an easement, I
To
did
do
not.
the work like a temporary,
Um,
I mean, that's good, I mean, I guess we do have an easement here for him to do the work on that property as part of this development. I guess I didn't think about it because he owns both.
Yeah, but it's 2 separate
Right,
properties, even though it's a common owner.
maybe.
I know it sounds silly to do it, but it doesn't mean that they're going to retain ownership of either of those properties into the future. There could easily be 2 separate owners at any given time. It just,
I would say definitely at the pipe we'd want an easement. I mean, state law, they have to allow discharge as it comes on. I mean, they can't then go block it.
right, but it's gotta be done in such a way that it's not going to affect the next door property. And I'm not even talking about contaminants or anything, but just simply
Yeah.
so it's not creating flooding,
Right.
pooling,
Mhm.
not affecting the road or anything else. I didn't know if this was the final grading that they were talking about.
Yes, that is the final grading.
Okay.
I don't, maybe with Mike?
Yeah, we'll talk to those
Okay.
about that, and if he
For
feels
that
that an
temporary
easement is
agreement.
needed, I would think.
I just,
Okay.
it started off with just seeing 3 separate injured schematics of how the final was going to be. And I didn't know, so that's why I asked.
That's,
There's a lot of that in these different maps. There are certain details that are still lit on one base map, and they're gone on another base map and so on. We will definitely clear that all up
Yeah.
before this thing goes
All right, thank
goes
you.
to signatures, yeah. Oh, back in
24.
24. No overnight parking is permitted in No parking is permitted in the easement areas. No overnight parking in the development is allowed. Outside storage, now that, just to clarify, if somebody's there in their storage unit doing something storage related or doing something within the confines of hours that have been approved for them, then they can park there. So if it's 3 in the morning and somebody's putting storage in, they can park there. Outside storage of materials, equipment, supplies of any sort is prohibited. No outdoor trash receptacles are allowed anywhere on the site. All trash has to be collected through that one source for collection down by the owner's lounge. Otherwise, we have garbage cans and dumpsters all over the place. All required building site and easement area improvements on the project have to be maintained in good repair at all times. So that is buildings, site, and easement areas must be maintained in good repair at all times. Paragraph 29 talks about the developer having to reimburse the municipality for all the costs associated with review and approval and inspections and so forth as related to this project. Paragraph 30, the village will have no responsibility to construct anything that's shown in this project. 31, unless otherwise approved by the village, owner agrees it will not commence construction of any improvements without written consent. I must really be hung up on that one because it's in here twice. Paragraph 32. The agreement and restrictions set forth will be deemed covenants running with the land. It's recorded in the Register of Deeds office. That's how it becomes a part of the title of the condominium units themselves. And it will inure to the benefit of everybody who comes after Jamie and Steve and Greg, so on. So that's the document. And I want to open it up to the commission for any further thoughts, questions, comments, or a motion. And in my recommended conditions of approval, if you are inclined toward an approval, is the deferral to the village staff to tighten up all those little details that we talked about tonight.
You had made some additional changes to the landscaping plan too since the last rendering?
Yep, we added those trees on the corner.
That was for the potential headlight issue?
Correct. Yep.
Was there any other changes significantly on that from the last one?
No.
As far as landscaping?
Yeah.
No, none.
What was the story on the lights again, Damon? The lights are gonna be smart where if there's no motion, they're gonna dim down, right? Is that
Yes.
correct? Do you remember what that percentage was?
It can be set to whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. To be determined, I guess.
Was it, I don't know where it is, someplace in this mess of papers, but.
What is it regarding? I can open it up.
No, the lights. You had a-
Photometrics?
You had a document in here about the lights that, for some reason, it triggered me thinking that the light had changed. Did you change the lights, or are they still the same?
Well, we changed them from a couple meetings ago because those were projecting more outward than downward. So with the recommendation of Mary, we changed those out. They're the same lights as the last meeting.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manufacturer style of lights or whatever.
They're full cutoff lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
All light shines going at 90.
Gotcha.
click through the exhibits real quick for you.
Just paging through, just for
Okay.
clarity.
We need separate motions for 3D and 4C.
Yes. The first is to take action on the site plan of operations. And the second is to execute the development agreement and deed restriction.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan of operations for Lake Park Storage Condominiums LLC. Based on all the stuff that we have in front of us. And that's for 3D.
And that staff will handle any final details.
Isn't that part of 4C then?
That's right.
I'm just trying to, we're both on the same sheet, want to make sure we got it right.
Right.
No second.
Any further discussion?
So they're gonna adjust building 5 though, not to have bathrooms, so,
That would be the word.
Yeah.
Either they're gonna take it out, or if the commission doesn't want them to have them in there, you need to say so.
I think it
Well,
just
that's
needs to
the word.
reflect, it needs to reflect accuracy, right? Plans.
Right.
So if you're gonna put them in there, that's fine, as long as the septic and all that is sized appropriately.
Right,
Right,
we'll take them
we're not
off.
controlling anyway,
Yeah,
so.
which is county-based.
Right, right.
So are you asking to keep them on the plan, or are you okay taking them off?
We're okay taking them off.
The only thing is, if they've sent those plans into the state, which takes, I mean, I think they're probably already at the state.
So you'd
They
like to
probably
keep them
have
on?
they have it, but I mean, you could give you something in writing that says.
Yeah, let's keep them on, because then I don't have to read the plan, just because they're already been sent to state.
And is the commission comfortable with that?
Yeah.
As long as
They can
everything's
always,
sized
they might
appropriately, yeah.
not use them anyways.
Yeah.
They have the option not to use them, so what difference does it make?
As long as the facilities are sized appropriately. then
Right,
right.
What does it matter if it's 17 or 22 or whatever the
Right.
number turns out to
right.
be?
And then they can always downsize.
They can choose not to put the laterals in, and that,
Right.
True.
that'll stifle it pretty good right there.
Right.
Okay. But if they're on the plans, you're gonna have to
You have
work
these,
with Naomi to show all those laterals and how that all works.
Yep.
Um,
It's one more building, so doesn't make a difference.
We already discussed no matter what.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I think it's to the state, not do it. Just like the.
All right, I'll also make a motion to,
Because they size
for
everything.
4C, to accept the developer's agreement and deed restriction document that's been drafted by staff.
With a couple modifications that we
Right.
already discussed tonight, right?
Right, that I basically, they're allowed to go to the staff to get the stuff changed if need be, get it all correct.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Are we going to include that verbiage about coming to the planning commission?
That was one of
Yes.
the modifications, so
Yeah.
she put the
Making
note
sure
together.
it's in there.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Would that fall also under number 31?
Was that the duplicate?
Is that the duplicate that
I think that was what she was saying.
Yeah, it was.
It's really stuck on there because that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna take that.
Okay. All right.
Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4D, review, discussion, and possible approval of the temporary project identification signs at Edgewood Avenue and Highway 164 in support of the proposed Lake Park Storage Condos LLC development. The signs would be located at West 229 South 8650 Big Bend Drive and immediately east of South 86 West 22880 Edgewood Avenue. The applicant is Jamie Peterson. The property owners are Howard Gleason and Maureen Gleason. Extreme Exteriors Incorporated, South 8654 Big Bend Road LLC, and EEI Construction LLC. The properties are zoned B3 General Business District and R3 Residential District respectively.
Right, so these signs would technically be off premises, but they're in the easements for this development. So technically, the planning commission, again, our sign code gives the authority to waive and modify, not to the Board of Appeals in signs, but to the planning commission, okay? So what they're asking for is those technically off-premises signs to be in the easements. They will be 32 square feet in area, where the code says construction signs should be 25 square feet. They will be 10 feet in height.
8 feet.
8 feet in height, where 7 feet is required. And they will be unlit, and they will be set back at least 10 feet from all the lot lines. So what you're being asked to give exception to is really just that 1 foot extra height and that few feet of extra square footage, 32 versus 25, and then the off premises. I don't have any objection to what they're asking for. I think the scale of what they're proposing is suitable for the locations where the signs are going to be placed. My only condition that I recommend you would attach is just that they fill out the application for and receive a sign permit.
I think I have 3 questions. So number 1, these are temporary signs, so how long is temporary signs allowed to be up?
These are construction signs, and in the code it says they may only be up for, I think it ends 30 days after all the construction activity is
Okay,
wrapped
so
up.
then that would allow them to have it up through until they basically get everything completed.
Yep.
Till the end of their timeline of September 23, roughly.
Okay. Next question I got is the temporary sign that would be erected by Edgewood Avenue does not appear to be on the easement. It appears to be outside of the easement. Is that correct, or do we need to talk about that?
It's in the easement.
It's in the
Right.
easement.
This
Yeah.
here shows that it's outside of it.
Okay. Then he can still pursue a sign permit for it as a temporary construction sign. He doesn't have to grant himself an easement. This is his own sign in his own property.
Okay.
Since he owns both
But you're right,
parcels.
it is,
That's considered that off premises sign.
Yeah, but
Even
you
more
had
so
said
if
that
it
they were
doesn't
both
have
inside the easements, and I wanted to make sure that that's
Clarify
not
that.
part of the consideration, because it's outside of the easement.
okay, good point, yeah, that's a good clarification, I didn't catch that.
Is there anything we need to add or subtract from that if it's not got an easement to put up that sign?
I don't believe so, it's still off premises.
Okay.
In the easement or out of the easement, it's still technically off premises, right?
And the other question I got is about the temporary sign facing to Big Bend or State Highway 164. The placement that it shows on this puts it inside of the easement, and is that going to create a block or a turn-in issue for public safety? As that sign is there basically right where you need to turn in fire trucks.
I don't think it'll be a problem.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because it does show that that would pick up a considerable portion of that 30-foot easement for, again.
Anyone talking?
turning in.
It's a 4x8 sheet of plywood, your truck will run
You don't turn the car. Question.
That's
I'm
what gives
driving,
kids
I'm driving
10 feet.
anything that
That's
happens.
an older engine?
Well, it's 10 feet.
That's why I have chainsaws in
Yeah,
my
it's
truck.
10 feet in, plus it's an 8-foot sign frame, so.
Right.
I know there's a difference between driving a car and driving a truck,
Well,
but,
it's
you know,
back pretty far, because you don't see where the right-of-way line is.
it's okay where it is.
So you'll already be turned on to the gravel pit.
Yeah, you already
by the time you're
well
coming.
into it before you get to the sign.
Yeah,
Oh, I guess I had one other question, that's maintenance of the sign itself. Temporary sign, but it's gonna be up for
Couple of years.
3 years, I think?
The code says all signs must be maintained.
Okay, all right, good, I didn't know.
In the code.
Good questions. You've already thought about them.
That's why I try to pre-read the stuff. we get.
I think it's a way to sell the project fast. I think that's important.
Agreed. Any more questions?
I'll make a motion to approve to grant the approval of the temporary signs for the project based on how they were presented, size and distance from road, et cetera.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Goes with the condition that he gets a permit, right?
That's part of it.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second item 4, planners report.
Can I ask one question before we get out of here? So, just to confirm, we're done with planning commission now, with the exception of staff level getting in, finalizing details. We don't have to come back next month for planning commission.
Well, unless you need occupancy.
Yeah, unless you knock it by then.
Next time you can see it.
I don't think it'll happen by next month.
That would be a
No,
miracle.
he doesn't have to come to you for occupancy, period. Only if he wants occupancy before he completes some of those items that are in the list. So no, every occupancy is not gonna come through.
Okay. Just want to make sure before we get out of here.
Are we taking a look at the covenants?
We did.
The
They're in
attorney
the
did.
exhibits.
No, the condominium,
Declaration.
homeowners agreement or whatever it is?
Yep.
It's in the packet as an exhibit.
What are we adding in, or talking about discussing adding in the additional language of the easement road? What am I missing here?
It's already in their declaration.
That's not our document, that's their document.
So we wouldn't.
We just review it.
Okay, no, that's what I'm asking is, do we review that? Because that might be the next step that you would have to come back.
The
No.
attorney already reviewed at staff level and they approved it.
Yeah, the condition, back when the planning commission reviewed it, was that the village attorney review and approve of the applicant's condominium declaration documents.
Okay,
And the
so then we're
condominium
not
plat.
going to put in any of the language involved with the determination on the other side.
I think it's in there.
It's,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Okay, I don't remember.
Do you remember if it's in there already or no?
I think he put it in already. I'd have to look through it, to be honest with
Was
you.
that shared with us?
Let me
Yeah,
just
okay.
have
For
to-
2 meetings
Our
ago?
electronic packet.
I thought we saw a draft of it even before.
I might have it in the car.
I didn't, no, it wasn't in the electronic packet. I'm sorry, I don't mean to hang us up on that, I just.
I'll,
That was
one way or
the next
another, I'll
step.
make sure it's in there, and we can maybe send it over to the attorney if, need be.
It's very comfortable. Which folder is it in?
Maybe it isn't in here after all.
I thought the way that we were talking earlier is that that one hasn't been completely created yet.
Well, we saw an initial
No, it has
draft of
been.
it. Like I
It
said,
has
I want to
been.
say like 2 months ago or something, I remember seeing it.
Fully
that was-
created.
That was
And-
early on.
And
Yeah.
the village planning commission's action at that time was for
Defer
the
to
village
legal.
attorney to
Mhm.
review and approve it.
Yeah, it was a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
$10,000. Go.
But I guess the point is Jamie to review it, and if it's not in there, get that in there and maybe toss us a copy.
Yep.
You know, send it to Mary and she'll disperse it or whatever, just a revised copy of if the verbiage isn't in there.
Yep. I mean, it's bounced back and forth between the attorneys a dozen times, so.
I'm just looking for future liability and just trying to ease it as much as possible.
Yep.
Just as an end case. The chances of that road having to come out are slim, but
Right.
you still have to just let people know.
Yeah, so this is it, right? We found it. This is the one we saw, but I don't know if this is the latest version of it or not.
Right?
That's it.
I honestly don't ever remember seeing that. But
Only
then
been a
again,
couple,
I've been
there's only been a
seeing-
couple reams of paper on this project so far.
Like, you got like 1,500 pages sitting in front of you, so.
Yeah. It's unbelievable how much paper we go through. We could all just get issued iPads and.
Whoa, 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 what I made of money here.
Look at budgeting on that.
Go Google Chromebooks maybe.
I'm just gonna go through and printer cartridges.
It's in here.
Yeah, I'd say at this point, let's just defer and review it offline, and if it's not there, make sure it's there. Get a copy, fresh copy sent over.
I will shoot you an excerpt tomorrow.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck, Jamin,
Thank
really.
you.
Hope it goes well.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and that's why it's not in this document,
It
because
wasn't
this is
something
a
to review
document they
tonight.
can change.
Yeah.
This is their own document.
See, that's why I was wanting to try to get it in a document where they would understand any future liability that comes with accepting that easement.
They had no objection to it when you
Yeah.
were referring to that. We'll put it in unless they have a fuss.
It's their liability, so
We'll
either
let it be there.
way, I don't.
Okay.
I don't see any problem with making sure that's on our documents at all. I mean,
Wouldn't hurt.
it is where it is. You know, we said it's okay to do it, let's do it.
Very good.
Don't worry about it.
Excuse me, Mary,
Yes.
for the plans for our shed or building,
Yeah.
can I just email that information to you?
You can, eventually for the building permit, we're gonna need all the hard copies,
Okay,
everything in hard copy.
okay.
So
All right, so did you want anything preliminary?
I
or-
would take those colored.
Okay. That's what we were waiting for.
That-
You guys sample all that?
You had no idea what you were in for.
I thought you guys were just curious.
Right.
Serious about that.
We didn't want to interrupt you, we
I
didn't
feel
know.
like they should get a tax break.
So sorry.
Thanks for spending extra time with us tonight.
So what
Sorry.
are the next steps? You email us then?
I
And then
will, I'll
we-
follow up with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And I'll also follow up with the building inspector
Okay,
to let him know what was approved.
okay. And then we come here to get our permits and,
Correct.
okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Good luck.
Good night.
I do.
Update, I have no update on Alicia Couch. I know she was in there.
She's in there, fire extinguisher's been checked, everything's good.
She's been operating, hasn't she? She's been operating, she's been giving out.
Yeah.
Before she got the approval, she was already
Yeah.
operating. Yeah,
Boy, not operating.
she's legitimate. Yeah.
Sticking people's
Um,
arms, COVID shots.
James Raymond, I also do not have an update. I don't know if he's pulled a permit. I'll leave that on here and give you an update next month. Update with respect to Sweet Ball, that just kind of started to come together this week.
They
They
put it-
did submit their landscaping plan.
Yeah, they put a new apron in there from off of Industrial Avenue, that gravel parking lot. And
Okay,
they updated all their extinguishers, but they still got a lot of work to do yet.
okay.
So, we're just keeping an eye.
But so that landscaping plan for along Industrial Avenue is going to be executed in the very foreseeable future.
Right.
And they asked for forgiveness about putting the landscaping in the area just south of the building, because they'd like to keep open the possibility for them to think about maybe adding a building on that south lot. And so they don't want to put in landscaping that would get pulled out. So that second phase of landscaping's been set for November 31st. 1st of this year,
November 30th.
November 30th.
Late November.
Yeah. So
Deer hunt.
if they still feel at that point that they're noodling things and they want another extension, they can ask for it at that time. The streetlight at the intersection of Henneberry, I honestly don't know where that is in the scheme of things here at the village anymore, but Steve Stizer called me the other day about his Ripplebrook East plat, and in passing said, oh, and as far as that other streetlight goes, he said, you know, I'll just put that in, you guys just tell me what you want, where you want it, and I'll just put that in for you.
And I had a note to ask about as a follow-up, because last we had heard it was, we were waiting if there was any documentation supporting that he was relieved of doing so from the board at
He's
that
willing
time.
to just do it right
Yeah.
now, so all we need to do is tell him, and I told him about the house side shields, and he understands that that would be,
Talked about this for months.
Can we put that in writing, because
Yeah,
just them promising via
yeah.
chatter doesn't
Um,
cut it for me.
I don't think he's been the one that's been resistant to it.
I
it's
think all we
been-
need is somebody to send him
The
something that
homeowners are
says,
just
here's
doing it
exactly
now.
what I
Right.
want.
At the time when it should have been put in, there wasn't no home there, so.
I know. Yeah, so that's why I think he's owning it, knowing that he needs to put it in, because it was documented.
I just don't want a promise verbally made and not committed to 5 years
Okay,
down.
so has the decision been made officially that
Yeah.
they do want
Yes.
the
Yes.
street light?
Yes.
All right, I'll communicate to Eric that Steve is ready, or do you want to handle this?
Oh, I can, that's fine, either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more of a
I'll put it on my list.
kind of thing, so yeah, have at it. And just tell Steve I told you, he said he'd pay for it. No, he did, he
Good.
made it
He's good
good to
that
bring
way.
that up, separate from the real reason for
His
it.
word has always been good. We've never had a problem.
Except for the one about a street light.
Yeah.
Dating back 15 years.
Well,
Is that all you have, Mayor?
Yeah, that's it.
Do you have any update on the property up the hill?
Hastings?
Yeah.
Which
Or
one?
Hastings.
Hastings.
I have no update on
I have no official update on that either.
Do you have any unofficial?
Moving on to the agenda.
Off the record.
It's not on the agenda, we can't speak about it.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Okay, we're done with the planner's report?
Yep.
All right, fire inspector's report.
still doing the fire inspections yet. All that stuff is going along quite well. 164, I guess, over here has been pretty good. I have to keep somewhat of an eye on it, where the mulches and all that stuff is, because before, when he first started and everything was really booming away, and right now it seems to be very smoothly and very, I haven't seen nothing of any problems.
Woodchuckers?
Yeah.
Well, and I do believe he's got the smaller trucks coming in there and delivering it to, and not the big one that he had registered from the last.
Well, I think he's just entering his super busy season.
Yeah.
Well,
See what the next month brings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just saying, I know.
where you're going with it. And, let's see, Industrial Drive, northwest end. There's a 3 lots in there that they have been working and cleaning out, so we got them to clean that up pretty clean. And it still needs to be done yet, quite a bit more. Other than that, that's all I got. You got any questions for me or anything?
How you feeling?
All right,
With your fingers, huh?
what can I say? When you get this crap, it just doesn't go away. And it just hits you after one right after another. First
Well,
part.
Paul came and told us a story about how you get punched in the mouth and you're losing teeth and you're wearing a hospital.
My wife,
Wanna check it out.
he
So
said
it was
that,
up at Quick Trip, so it was.
whatever. You go in, you figure in June, when this started to kick in, you figure, okay, fine. Okay, we got it solved, so okay, the muscles are coming, I got the strength back again, I'm good. And then all of a sudden I got pain in my left lung and wondering why, so when I went in, sure enough, there's a blood clot laying in there. And that caused another problem, so after they got done with that, blood thinners and so forth and everything else, and that was fine. Then all of a sudden I go take the shot for the virus and the Pfizer one, shot number 1. And 3 or 4 days later, all of a sudden something starts kicking again, so then Went in the hospital another 4 more days.
Mm.
But this time I had surgery on my lower jaw. I had a tooth in there that was not being very cooperative. But they did a root canal on one, and then I guess somehow it caused problems to the one next to it. So you live with it. You just live with it and fight it, and you just say, hey, wait, nobody's gonna beat my butt.
Keep living with it, man.
So there. Sorry to say it that way, but that's the way I am.
Just glad you're here.
Yeah,
Yep.
good to have you here.
Thank you.
Building inspector's report.
He said nothing,
Okay.
everything is gone.
Engineer's report.
I have not heard anything on Brook East subdivision. I've done one full review of the site plans. I don't know, Mary, did he mention that they're working on a resubmittal or?
Yeah.
Okay. Working on addressing the comments. And then improvements at Douglas Court, I did talk to Mr. Khan today, and his contractor sent an email to village staff indicating that they had stake out there for the pond. They're gonna set up erosion control next week, and they're actually waiting on the pipe materials. It's hard to get materials right now before they start construction, but they think a week after that. So first week of May. It's my last, what they said they were gonna be out there working. Let's hope.
Once they start, how long is proposed to finish? Not that
A
long.
week for the pond and then the roadway, and then we gotta get them to do the asphalt fixes. So once we get them out there, we don't want them to leave. They'll never come back.
Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, so hopefully that'll get moving.
He was gonna go, what, door to door next week and
Yes, Monday
just
they were
notify the
gonna
neighbors?
notify the neighbors that they're gonna start construction. And then we're gonna,
Thought
they're,
that was nice.
yeah. They're required, or, we've asked that they let us know the first day they're gonna be out there. Eric and I are gonna come out and make sure they know, are reminded of what we discussed at the pre-construction meeting on access and erosion control and all those things. And then we have an inspector that's gonna be out there intermittently checking. And probably mostly when they're laying the pipe is probably the most critical part. So they're aware of those requirements.
Very good. Any questions? Any correspondence? Mike, you want to take us home?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
I don't know if you want